Hello and welcome to today's video. Today thought I would talk about when we're disappointed in our knitting. So I read a post on Reddit or social media, I can't remember where I saw it recently. Somebody shared photos of several of things they've knitted in the last year, and then they went through and pointed out what they weren't happy about with each one. Some of it came down to fit, some of it came down to just the look of the item. And I thought I would go through some of these issues because a lot of it was about fit. So I'm going to talk through a few things around fit and how to choose the right size and how to make sure you've knit something that you're going to be happy with. A little bit about learning from our mistakes, but also a little bit about our expectations and what we expect from our hand knits. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new here, my name is Anniken. I design knitting patterns. I teach knitting workshops online and in person, and I sell yarn through my website, YarnAddict.co.uk. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. So as I said, I saw this post on social media, can't remember where. If you happen to be the person who posted this, I'm not picking on you specifically or anyone specifically. I just thought this was a good idea for a bit of a discussion around what we expect from our knitting. So are you always dissatisfied with your knitting? Do your knits never turn out quite the way you want them to? I'm talking specifically about wearable things, especially garments that have to fit a certain way for them to be useful. Are you always disappointed in your knitted garments? I think if the answer to that is yes, you have to look at a few things. One, are your expectations realistic? Is it actually something wrong with the garment? Is there something wrong with the pattern? Or are you expecting a sweater to turn you from looking like I'll use myself as an example. I can't expect a sweater or any kind of garment, any kind of clothing to turn me from being a 56-year-old fat middle-aged lady to somebody who looks like they're 30 and a supermodel. That's just not going to happen. So when you look at a garment, when you assess whether you like it or not, is it because you don't like the garment and you don't like the way it fits on you? Or is it because you don't like the way you look? You're not happy with your body. I mean, I've had body issues all my life. I grew up thinking I was too fat. Looking back at pictures, I was probably bigger than what the normal was, and I don't like using that word, but what was regarded as normal at the time. But I certainly wasn't fat. And I've been a lot heavier than I am now. I've been a lot lighter than I am now. I do think sometimes we have to be very realistic. If the garment is modeled on a 30-year-old skinny woman and you are not 30-year-olds or skinny, will it look the same on you? Probably not. It's the same as seeing something modeled in a fashion magazine. You can't expect it to look the same on a model as it does on you unless you happen to look like a supermodel. But let's face it, most of us don't. So you've got to be realistic. Are your expectations realistic? I can knit the most perfectly fitted garment. It's still not going to make me look like I'm 4 sizes smaller than what I am, because that's not realistic. Nothing's going to do that. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing about what's flattering for different body types, because I think that's such a personal thing. And normally when we say what's flattering, most of us mean what makes me look slimmer than I am. And I'm not sure whether that's necessarily what we want to look for anyway. We want to look for something that makes us feel comfortable and makes us feel like we look good, and that we feel comfortable in our clothes. So make sure your expectations are realistic. You not like the fit of something. Have you actually chosen the right size to knit? I watched somebody on YouTube who does travel videos, or rather how to travel videos. Like packing videos, what to pack to take on holidays, how to pack and carry on only, and that kind of stuff. I'm obsessed with those kind of videos. I watch a lot of them on YouTube. And she quite often says, I'm a US size whatever, and I usually take a size large. Well, you can line up 10 different patterns, and depending on how they're sized, you might look at the large size in 10 different patterns from 10 different designers, and find that the measurements for those patterns are completely different. I know there's certain clothing brands that I buy from a lot. I may be like one clothing brand, I'm usually 2XL or occasionally an XL, but sometimes I'm not. So you can't just look at the pattern and say, well, I'm normally a large or I'm normally a medium. You have to look at the measurements, compare them to your measurements. Each pattern should have a set of actual measurements, so the actual measurements of the garment, and to fit measurements. Now, to fit measurements are really just a guide, because you need to also decide how you'd like it to fit on you. So if it's something that's supposed to be very fitted, you may think that's going to be too fitted for what you're comfortable in. So you might want to go up a size. You might look at something that's supposed to be very oversized and boxy, and you might think, well, I'd like it a little bit smaller because I don't like things that are too oversized. So, and if you're not sure what you like the fit of, measure yourself. Preferably get somebody else to help you if you can, but measure like key measurements, part of your body. And if you can, get somebody else to help you, and then measure some of the garments that you like the fit of and compare them to the patterns. And then you'll get an idea for what kind of ease you like, what kind of shapes you like, and things like that. But you have to measure yourself regularly, because we do change. I don't know whether women change more than men, whether we change more with like a monthly cycle and stuff. I remember one of my daughters as a teenager, I think it was a hormonal thing, but her bust size, actually her bra size, increased by a whole size every time she had a period. So she had to have 2 sets of bras, one for when she was on a period and one for when she was not. It was quite expensive because she went up, she was quite big. She had quite a big bust as a teenager anyway, although she was very slim. But her bust would go up a whole size when she was on a period, and then go down a size. And she's now, even though she's bigger now than she was as a teenager, I think her bust size is actually smaller now. So I think it was very much a hormonal thing. I think it's probably her hormones going a bit crazy and that affecting her bust size. It wasn't a cheap period, I can tell you that. So make sure that you are measuring yourself regularly. Probably a good idea to measure yourself every time you make a new garment, or at least check the fit of stuff you've already knitted to make sure you're still happy with the fit. I find it easier to measure the fit of something. So if I have a sweater that I like the fit of, I'd like to measure that and use that to work out the size of what I'm knitting, if I'm knitting for myself. When I'm designing for magazines and yarn companies, I have to use a standard list of measurements. So I have various lists. You can find them various places online. Some publications and yarn companies will send you a list of measurements for various sizes. A lot will just expect you to find their own. So sizes may not be the same across a publication or a yarn company. This depends on how they operate. So always check the measurements in the pattern. So how do you make sure that your garment comes at the size that you expect it to? Well, you have to actually check your tension. I'm sorry, there's no way around checking your tension. Tension, 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 gauge, 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 tension and gauge, same thing. You have to check your tension. That means either knitting a tension square correctly and big enough for it to be useful, or starting the garment and then measuring it from your garment. Now, there are a few things to remember. If there's something that you are intending to wash at some point, you will want to wash your swatch to see how that reacts. Sometimes it can be useful to knit a swatch, and the swatch has to be big enough. I'm not going to go into detail on how to swatch. I'm sure I got videos already on that, or maybe a tutorial on my old blog, I can't remember, but I might do that in the future sometime. Let me know if that's something you'd like me to do. But you need to make sure that your swatch is big enough to be useful. I was watching my mum knit a swatch once, and she cast on the number of stitches. Say the pattern said 20 stitches to 10 centimeters. She cast on 20 stitches, and she knitted probably about that much, and then she got a tape measure out while it was still on her needles, and I'm like, no, that's not how you swatch. And I also saw a designer, very experienced designer, very, very experienced designer with a huge following, do that on a YouTube video, and I was like, that's not how you do it. You need to knit a swatch that's big enough. So you want to measure 10 by 10 centimeters in the middle of the swatch. So the swatch has to be bigger. I would say it should be at least 15 by 15 centimeters, preferably bigger if you can. And you need to be able to measure 10 by 10 centimeters in the middle of the swatch. If it's something that has a tendency to stretch a lot, like lace, I would say make it bigger. And with lace, it's a good idea to see how much it will stretch during blocking, because lace is something you do have to kind of stretch a bit when you block. Other things, how you block it, and blocking isn't always just wetting it and stretching it. Blocking can just mean just steaming it or just washing it and lying it flat to dry. So make sure you wash your swatch the way you plan to wash the garments. If you plan to wash it in the machine, put your swatch in the machine or hand wash it. And then lay it out flat to dry, pin it, stretch it, whatever you're going to do to it. It depends on what it is. So I can't give you any hard and fast rules about that, because it just depends on what you're making and what the stitch pattern is. Thicker yarns tend to stretch more during knitting and during wearing. So thicker yarns and certain fibers like cotton, bamboo, alpaca, superwash wool, certain fibers just stretch more. And if the yarn is thicker as well, then it will stretch more. If you think about the weight of something, so if a garment says it's going to take 800 grams of yarn, that's quite heavy for a garment. So if it's got that weight, when you're wearing it on your body, it's hanging off your body, it is going to stretch. Certain stitch patterns will stretch more than others. That's why I like to knit with thinner yarns. This is knitted in lace thread yarn, but I held 2 strands double, but it's still incredibly light. I used 7 25-gram balls. So that's less, I've got my calculator out to work that out. That's less than 200 grams for this sleeveless slipover in my size, and I'm quite big. And this is quite roomy on me as well. It's not fitted at all. It's quite loose fitting on me. But it weighs less than 200 grams. Whereas if I was knitting this in Aran weight yarn with maybe cables or something, it could easily be 500-600 grams, maybe more than that. So that's obviously going to stretch a lot more. And if you're into knitting stuff in chunky yarn, then it's going to stretch more. So just bear that in mind. And sometimes the only way to learn these things is to either learn through experience, or you can, if you're not sure about a fiber, is knit a large swatch, and I mean a large swatch, and then actually hang it up somewhere for a while, so that you can see whether it actually take very accurate measurements, hang it up. And you may think, well, it's only stretched 1/4 centimeter, but if you've knitted, say, 20 centimeters and it's stretched 1/4 centimeter, if you multiply that by the full length of the garment, then that might be enough to make it too long for you. Also look at your yarn choice. I've already talked about the fact that some fibers and yarn thicknesses will stretch more than others. Certain yarns and certain fibers are suitable for certain patterns. If the pattern is knitted in pure wool, for example, pure non-superwash wool, that's going to be very different to a yarn that's 100% cotton. So for example, if you see a colorwork sweater that's knitted in wool, but you're allergic to wool and you find it very itchy, and you knit it in cotton, it might be soft enough and non-itchy enough for you to wear, but it may not look the way you want it to. So my mum is very, very sensitive to wool. Virtually everything makes her itch. And she wanted to knit a stranded colorwork sweater. She had knitted some in wool, but she wasn't wearing them, because even wearing it over something else, she was finding it too itchy. So she decided to knit it in cotton. But then she wasn't happy with the colorwork, because it doesn't look as even in cotton as it does in wool. Wool tends to kind of fill in the spaces. So when you knit, you're always having inconsistencies, and wool tends to like fill in those spaces and even itself out a bit. Cotton doesn't do that. So it didn't look as nice in cotton as it did in wool in the same yarn thickness. And she wasn't happy about that, and I don't think I've ever seen her wear it. Also, cotton is not going to be as warm as wool. So if you're knitting something for warmth, then you want to look at fibers like wool, alpaca, cashmere, rather than cotton, bamboo, because they're not going to be as warm. Thinner yarns are way more forgiving than thicker yarns, and also more economical to knit with. Yes, I know it takes you longer, and if you're somebody who takes months to finish a sweater, you might want to go for thicker yarns because you want to finish it quicker. But I think that for most of us, thinner yarns give us a much better result. You don't have to worry about stretching as much. don't have to worry about the weight of it as much. I remember I designed a pattern once. It was a crochet pattern for one of the knitting magazines. Yes, it was a crochet pattern in a knitting magazine. A lot of people complained about that, but this particular knitting magazine, which isn't around anymore, I don't think, used to have a crochet pattern every month. And I designed this crochet cardigan. I think it was one of my first crochet garments I designed, and it was in a yarn that was, I think, 80% bamboo and 20% wool. I had to knit or crochet it up in size 10. It was so heavy, and I remember thinking, if I was going to make that in my size, and at the time I think I was probably a bit bigger than I am now, it would have just been like wearing a straitjacket. It would have been so heavy. Those weighted blankets that people like, it would have been like wearing one of those. So if you're not sure, if you haven't got the experience to know these things, and you may not want to learn from your mistakes, because that means spending money on something that may not turn out the way you want it to, then try and read about it online, ask questions, ask for other people's experiences. There are loads of groups on Ravelry, social media, Threads, X. I don't really use X that much anymore. I scroll through it for certain things, but I don't really engage on there as much as I used to. Threads seems to be a very friendly place with loads of knitters. Facebook groups. There's several different groups on Reddit where you can ask knitting questions. So ask people what their experience are with certain fibers, and see what their experience is. For example, talking about chunky, this was in Knitting Magazine recently. I can't remember the issue, but in November maybe 2025. And this is knitted in a yarn that looks chunky, but it's a blown yarn, which means that it's very, very lightweight. I can't remember how much this weighs, but it's not much. Yes, it's a tiny garment. It's a size 10, and it's lace, but it knits up as like a Aran weight chunky yarn, but because this is blown yarn, it's incredibly lightweight and didn't take that much yarn at all. So if you want to knit something that's thicker, a blown yarn is a good thing to look at. I think that was Rowan. I'll look up what yarn it is and put it on the screen. The only thing I would say, my experience with blown yarns, and I've only knitted I think with this one, and Drops Air, I think it is. They are both quite fluffy, so they do shed a little bit, which you may or may not like. If you can, try things on as you go. I always, when I knit something, or a garment at least, I always will, after a while, probably about after that long, about 20 centimeters maybe, I will measure the width of it, just to make sure it's coming out the width I want it to. Because yes, sometimes your tension does lie to you, and something that works at a certain tension on a relatively smallish tension square may not work out at the same tension in a full-size garment. So always measure the width of it after a while. I find for me, and I haven't actually checked this, I don't know if it's true or not, but when I cast something on, quite often it looks really wide, and after I've knitted about 20 centimeters, it looks like it's narrower. So I tend to knit about 20 centimeters before I measure the width. It's so that I don't knit the whole garment and find that it's too small. Obviously, a lot of stuff I knit is not for me, it's for magazines, so I can't try it on. I can try it on my dress form, because I have a dress form that's a size 10, so I can try it on there, but I can't try it on myself. But just laying it flat and measuring it, sometimes I will pin it out if it's something that's going to stretch slightly during blocking. I will just pin it out and stretch it slightly to get measurements, and sometimes I will block it on the needles. Either put it on a barber cord, or waste yarn, or a very long circular needle or something like that, and then I will actually like soak it or spray it with water or do whatever I'm going to do during the blocking process, and block it, leave it to dry, and then measure it or try it on or whatever. Especially when it comes to things like lace that I know is going to stretch quite a bit, because it's not a good idea for me on tight deadlines to finish something and find that it's going to be too small. It has happened loads of times, but I'm trying to be better at checking stuff as I go. If you have any doubts during knitting, stop and check your measurements, block and try it on, whatever you need to do. I was knitting a different version of this recently. This thing I'm very happy with. It's the right size for me. I like the armhole depth, I like the neckline, Although neckline could probably be a little bit higher, but I like it. It doesn't look very good with this top underneath, because this pink top underneath has got quite a high neckline, and I think it would look better if the neckline was a bit lower. But it happened to be what I had to put on today, and it's cold today here, so I wanted something warm that I could put on. And but I recently knitted this while I was in Norway during Christmas. I knitted this in a different yarn, so I don't actually have it here, and I will have talked about this on my podcast before this video comes out. I think it's episode 187, but I may be wrong. It's the episode that'll be out the week of the 5th of January. 5th is a Monday, so it'll be out 6 Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 9th. Friday 9th, I think. If you want to go back and look at it. This is 2 strands of mohair silk. I held 1 strand of alpaca silk, which I think is a similar meterage, about 25 grams as this yarn is, a similar thickness, although less fluffy. So I held 1 strand of alpaca silk with 2 strands of Rico Make It Bloomchen sequin yarn. And I checked my tension. I only checked my stitch tension. I didn't check my row tension because I was too lazy to knit a big enough swatch. And the stitch tension was okay. So I thought, well, the row tension will be fine. This is knitted top down, and I knitted it exactly the same number of rows before I started the neck shaping and the armhole shaping. But my other top came out when I came to pick up. I kind of suspected maybe it was a bit shorter than this one, but I didn't try it on at any point till I got to the length where I wanted to decide how long I wanted it. That's the first time I tried it on. But when I came to pick up stitches for the neckline, I think on this one I picked up 30 between the shoulder and the front neck. And on the other one I only picked up 20, which is a lot less. And I was like, oh, is this neckline even going to be big enough? But it was. I think here I did 10 rounds, and the other one I did 8 rounds. But it comes right up around here. It is big enough, and I can pull it over my head fine. But it came right up here. And the armholes are also quite a bit shorter. Probably quite a bit shorter. I can't remember the number of stitches, but I picked up quite a fewer stitches for the armhole edging than I did on this one. And that was because my row tension wasn't the same. So even though my stitch tension was okay, I think probably my final stitch tension, I haven't actually checked it or compared it, but its garment isn't quite as loose fitting as this. But that might be that this one has relaxed a bit while I've been wearing it as well. And the other one I've only worn once or twice, I think, so far, because I just finished it a few days ago. But I didn't really think to check my row tension because I just assumed it was going to be the same, and it wasn't. So I'm happy with it. Because it was knitted top down, to fix the neckline and the armhole would have been a bit of a hassle. So I'm happy with it. It's definitely wearable, and I'm more than happy with it. But it didn't come out exactly like this one, which I thought it would. So I've learned a lesson there that I need to take a bit more time. I should have actually tried it on when I joined for the front neck, because I did it back to the underarm, then I did the front to the neck shaping, and at that point when I joined for the front neck, I could have just pulled it over my head to see where that finished. And I also could have tried it on before I joined after the armholes, but I didn't do that because I couldn't be bothered to do it because I was on holiday and I was just being lazy. But I should have done. So if you have any doubts during knitting, stop, measure it, try it on, block it, do whatever you need to do to make sure you're happy before you carry on. Also, will the garment fit your lifestyle? If you knit something in a fiber that's very nice and very luxurious, but it's definitely going to have to be hand washed, but you have a very busy lifestyle, maybe you have young children, maybe you are very, very busy and you just don't have the time or the patience for hand washing, then there's no point making something that's going to require hand washing. I know that most of my knits are going to be hand washed, and that's fine. I'm happy to hand wash them. Like this, when this needs washing, it'll be hand washed. I don't even know whether this yarn can be machine washed or not, but even stuff that can be machine washed, I tend to hand wash them because I'm so worried about ruining my knits by washing them incorrectly. So I will hand wash most of my hand knits, and I don't mind that. I tend to wear most of my hand knits with something underneath, so they don't need washing all the time. You shouldn't be washing your knits all the time anyway, especially if it's wool. Obviously, if you wear it next to your skin, you have to wash it more, but if you wear something underneath it, then you shouldn't have to wash it all the time. unless you spilled something on it, obviously. But be a bit careful. If you get any stains and they spilled something, I'll try and wipe it off straight away, and then you don't have to launder your knits as much as you maybe think you do. But make sure that your garment will fit into your lifestyle. You're only going to be happy with it and wear it if it fits into your lifestyle. Now, when I knitted this, which I finished end of November, maybe sometime in November, I immediately wore it quite a lot, but it is quite fluffy because it is mohair, and I wear a lot of black, and this color doesn't necessarily go with my black tops because they will leave them pink. So if I then get too warm and I want to take it off, that's not ideal. First time I wore this was over a pink linen shirt, a long pink linen shirt, and I was wearing it to a workshop, and I didn't know how warm it was going to be at the workshop because it was the first time I taught there. So I thought if I put this on over the pink linen shirt, I don't have to, and I was wearing a t-shirt underneath the linen shirt because it's a bit see-through. I thought I can take this off if it gets too warm, and I don't have to worry about the pink linen shirt having the pink fluff on it because it's pink, so it doesn't show as much. Whereas if I'd put it over a black t-shirt, I would have been more worried about taking this off if it got too warm, because I would have left loads of pink fluff on my black t-shirt. And I am somebody, especially when I teach, I can go from being really hot 1 minute to 10 minutes later being freezing. When I'm busy and I'm walking around and helping people a lot, I get warm. This particular place, it was quite cold when we got there, but they put the heating on, and by lunchtime it was quite warm, and in the afternoon I was a lot warmer. So I kept this on for most of the morning, but after lunch I took it off because it got quite warm in there. So I know that for me, something like this works really well, which is why I've already knitted another one, because I like this kind of garment because it adds a bit of warmth when I feel cold, but it's not too warm because I do overheat quite quickly, but I also get cold quite quickly. So I just need to know what kind of garments suit my lifestyle and what's comfortable for me to wear. I spend most of my time at home working, walking the dog, I go to the gym, I do stuff in the house, I sit and knit. So most of my lifestyle is very relaxed, run the odd errand, that kind of thing. But I also have times when I teach and I don't know what my teaching location is going to be, whether it's going to be hot or cold or whatever. So it's nice to wear something I've made when I teach, because I had a comment a couple of years ago, which is what made me decide I was going to start knitting more for myself, because somebody commented on me and the owner of the place where I was teaching that even though we both design, we rarely wear our hand knits. I don't actually wear my hand knits at that particular place where I teach because it's too hot. It's a place that's very, very hot. So even if I'm wearing something on the way there in the car to drive there, I take it off when I get there because it's just too hot. But I thought then maybe I should start making more of my own stuff so I can wear it when I teach. And on days like today when it's just a bit chilly. Finally, learn from your mistakes. Don't be afraid to admit that you got something wrong and decide what you can learn from it. Whether you decide to rip out your garment and re-knit it, or whether you just learn from it and give it away to somebody or wear it anyway, even if it's not the right fit. If it's wearable, you might decide you just want to wear it. You might decide to give it away to somebody. You might decide to rip it out. I know some people don't like ripping out their knits. If it doesn't fit you and you're not happy with it, it's better to rip it out and fix it than to have a garment that you're just unhappy about and you're not going to wear. Yarn is not cheap. So unless you bought a really budget yarn, and I'm assuming if you're buying a very budget yarn, then that's probably because that fits your budget, and that's absolutely fine. So whatever yarn you've chosen to buy, whatever level of budget you're on, whether it's cheap budget or very high budget, that's up to you. But if you've bought a yarn that fits your budget, it's probably expensive to you. So you want to make sure you're happy with it and you're going to want to wear it. So if you're not happy with it, it's better to rip it out and knit something else than to be unhappy with it. So let me know what your experience is. Do you have any advice? Do you have garments that you have knitted that you absolutely hate and some you absolutely love? What is it that makes you love them, and what is it that makes you hate them? Share your experiences in the comments. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.